Hello and welcome to Your Average Bear Gaming. I am George, and today we're going to do some completely unnecessary but also ridiculously necessary magnetization. I'm talking about the Aeldari Avatar of Khaine. It's a beautiful model, and it comes with a variety of heads and a variety of weapons that you could use to make your avatar the awesomest avatar that's on any tabletop game. Okay, of Warhammer 40k. Still, it's yours. You should be able to field it however you want. None of it actually matters, though. No matter what head you choose, it's the same avatar. No matter what weapon you choose, it's the same stat line. But it's a gorgeous model. Why not show it off by showing all three impressive weapons and headsets? I mean, I'm sold. How about you? Let's do some completely unnecessary but also phenomenally fun work. Let's go! Alright, if we're going to magnetize the Avatar of Khaine, we have to kind of really narrow down what it is that we want to accomplish. And looking at the instruction guide right here, we see that we basically have three variants. We have this guy with a classical head, we have this guy with the kind of Spartan head, and we have this guy without a helmet. And there's also a swap of the weapons. So our approach is going to be to be able to get our core, right? We build our core and then just swap out the heads with whatever head we want, and the weapons with whatever one we want. I think we can pull that off with minimal muss and fuss. It seems to be fairly straightforward, but there is a little bit of trickiness, and so that's what we'll talk about here. The general approach is going to be to make as clean a model as possible while still giving us the ability to swap the parts that we want to swap, which means doing as much of the magnetization internally, so inside the body of the avatar. In this case, we're swapping out the head. We want to make sure that the magnets are inside the neck. And the same thing with the weapons, right? The shoulders, make sure that the magnets are hidden inside as much as possible. We may not be able to get all of it. The other approach is that we're going to use the largest magnet we could possibly fit in any potential slot so that we can have the maximum amount of force to keep those pieces where we want them to be. And finally, we want to make sure that we build the internal support for a magnet. So, for example, a lot of our pieces, a lot of our models in Warhammer 40k are hollow. Reduces cost, reduces weight, all kinds of good stuff. I like it. But that means that when we are drilling into the surface of the model to insert a magnet, there isn't going to be anything on the back of it for the magnet to adhere to. So it's just going to be held to that surface by the circumference of the magnet. There's that little layer that you drilled through. That's not the best solution. So I try to build a support structure behind that surface so that we can sink the magnet and have it adhere to something other than just that surface piece. So that might be a little weird to get your mind around, so I think what would be a good idea is to talk about the very first example, and that would be to getting the head swaps. Let's prepare for that. So the way this model is designed, you have to start with the magnetization process really, really early on. And I say that because while assembling the heads, like this guy, that comes pretty towards the end of the build. Getting the body is basically the first thing that you're going to do. And it's, so far, I've only got two pieces, but these have been some very tricky pieces in terms of how to position the piece onto the torso. The torso itself is made out of a bunch of different pieces, which is cool if you're into building. If you're not, it's going to be kind of a pain. I've enjoyed it so far, but it's early days. But even that very first piece was tricky. This second piece, which is the neck, right here is less tricky. You have an option of having 3 different neck pieces to go with the 3 different heads. So each head has its own neck variant. And so I was looking at it to see, well, why? Can I use the different necks? And for the most part, you can, except for that 3rd head. This is the 3rd head. I haven't taken it off its sprue, but it's got hair as part of that head, and that hair drapes across the body in a very certain way. So I'm going to use the neck that's associated with this head. The other 2 heads don't have hair, so you could mount them on any neck, but this one I have to be a little bit more careful about. But you'll notice that, so here's the back, here's the back of the torso, here's the neck piece. These are all hollow. So when I glue these 2 pieces together, it'll be great. But the thickness of this, the very top of this neck, this surface piece right here, that's the surface that will be adhering to our magnets. That is not sufficient for my purposes. I want to make sure to have a stack of magnets here to increase, even if just a little bit, increase the amount of force holding the head onto the neck. And so to accomplish that, I'm going to get some of this stuff. It's Army Painter's green stuff. It's a 2-part epoxy. I'm sure you've all seen it. This one is my favorite brand so far. It seems to be the most consistent to work with, the easiest to work with. And so I'm using this wherever I can. And so my plan here is to build material underneath the neck. And that material, once it cures, will allow the magnets to adhere to it when I add the glue. So as opposed to having empty space there, it'll be sunk into this into this material, this green stuff. So while our green stuff sets a little bit, I don't want it too hard, but I do want it to set just a little bit. I'm going to prepare this neck piece. Right there, I've created a guide hole so that the initial hole for my magnets can go in through there. And for most of my magnetization work, I usually use a rotary tool that's powered, but you'll notice how small this piece is and how thin everything is. So I don't want to impale myself with a drill bit. So I'm just going to use this kind of hand drill to push in the initial hole. I increase the size of my drill bit just gradually to not make any weird mistakes. Until I finally get to the size that I believe I need. Gotta be real careful with this big one. There we go. So you're probably wondering, what size hole did I use? Well, it was a hole just big enough. I'm not sure what the drill bit size is, but it's a hole just big enough for this magnet right here that'll fit through. And this magnet is 3 millimeters wide by 2 millimeters tall. This was the largest magnet I have on hand that will fit this neck structure. You could probably have another millimeter or so to play with if you wanted to, but anything bigger than this I think is going to get risky. So since I didn't have, like I say, a 4 millimeter by 2 millimeter, I just went with what I had, and that's a 3 millimeter by 2, and it's probably going to work just fine. So it'll get stacked kind of right there, kind of like so, and I'll probably put a 2-stack in there. I don't know. I feel like maybe I could do a third, but the third would probably be wasted. It'll have a very marginal impact on the strength of the bond between the head and the neck. But before I glue this in place, I want to have my internal structure. Just to have something for those magnets to stick to, and that's where that green stuff comes in. cut off a little piece, and I put it in here, kind of like so. And I've put it in here at this point because I want to sink that in as the model, as the green stuff cures. And I want to make sure that it's flush. I don't want that magnet sticking out anywhere. And as a side benefit, as I'm building up the structure, I probably won't need to use any super glue because as the green stuff cures, it'll have its own kind of bond. But I do want to make sure that that magnet is flush as I can manage it. And I'm going to do the same kind of thing to this side. This is the other half of the neck. So I'll build that green stuff right in there. And so if I've done this right, the magnets will push the green stuff away from it, so it'll make itself some room. Ensuring the maximum amount of material for the magnets to hang out in. So you just want to make sure that before you finalize that seal, that you take a look at the magnets. They're going to want to move on you because of the pressures that you're applying. So make sure that as you're kind of figuring out the last position for your magnets and the green stuff, that you pay attention to that, so that when it does set, the magnets are exactly where you want them. And so it involves a little bit of scraping, a little bit of pushing around, but when you're ready, you can start for the actual more permanent bond between the plastic parts. In this case, it's just the neck and shoulders. Unfortunately, somewhere inside the neck, things get a little bit tighter than I expected, so I could not use the 3x2s. So I have these 2x1s, and I'm just going to shove a stack of them into the closed neck part right there, and I'm going to sink a stack in there, probably 3. And so that's as big as I'm able to get. Unfortunately, I'm a little uncomfortable with the size that I'm able to put on there, but it is what it is. Hopefully we'll be able to compensate for that small magnet in the neck with a larger magnet on the head. It doesn't work out 100%, but it helps a bit. So I'm going to let this set, and I'll leave the cleanup until it has a nice hold. But you want to make sure the part is aligned correctly. It's a little tricky. All right, let's move on to the head. And here is the head. It comes in 2 pieces. Here's the front. I'm sorry, this is the back. This is the front. So the idea here is to get these two glued together and have a magnet inside the head here somewhere. And thankfully, the piece is hollow. Well, not thankfully. If it was solid, I wouldn't have to worry about it. I could glue it together and then just drill, and I'd be fine. But that means, since it's hollow, I have to go back in there and build up some material. So I'll do the same thing. I'll put in some of that epoxy putty on both sides of the head, and then drill a hole, and I should be good to go. And it looks like I should be able to use the larger size magnet on this side. But we will see, we will see. We've got our green stuff inside this back head, and we have it in here. So now we're going to try to glue these things together, and hopefully it doesn't create a mess. Green stuff and glue don't seem to play well together. At least not before the green stuff is cured. That was a lot easier than the neck and shoulder part. There is going to be a little bit of seepage. I must have added too much material. I'll go in there and clean that off with a hobby knife to scrape it off, but once it's dry. We do the same thing to the other heads before we start drilling any holes or anything like that, because I want to make sure that our magnet alignment is right, but I also want to wait until these pieces start setting. So let's move on to the other two heads. Now that the heads are assembled and filled in, I've drilled the holes out at the base of the head, and that's where I'm going to sink my magnets. And so I've got that with all the heads, and when this operation is done, it'll look basically like this. You can kind of see the magnets. I ended up having to use the 3x2s because my initial plan to use these larger ones, I'm just concerned that I don't have enough space to put them in there, so I'll have to be happy with these, and I just happen to have just enough to finish mounting the heads, but not enough for other things, so I'll have to buy some more of those. But once the hole's drilled out, sink a little bit of super glue in the hole, like so. Confirm that your stack of magnets repels on that side, so they'll go in that way. And if you want to be precise about the number of magnets that you stick into that stack, I stick them on to this drill bit that I'm not using at the moment, and I use that to sink the magnets right into that hole and then slide it out. And that makes it much easier to put in the magnets without a bunch of muss and fuss. But you always want to confirm that the orientation of your magnets is as you expect it, because the last thing you want to do is dig out magnets that have already been glued. All right. Magnets are in, give it some time to set, and then you confirm that everything fits the way it's supposed to. Now that everything is set, I have this really partially assembled Avatar model, but more importantly, I have the heads that are now magnetized. Now I will say that there is a bit of a difference between the heads. So there's this guy. This is the one without the helmets, and it's a nice snug fit, but the other two heads are less snug. It looks like there is a kind of a shape to the necks that that match the helmeted heads more readily. So the shapes of these lend themselves to kind of a looser fit, which I'm less than happy with, but without finding a way of magnetizing the different necks, that's as best as we're going to get, but it does the job. We can replace the heads now at will. So now that the heads are done, we're going to move on to the next piece, which the next piece that we can magnetize, which is the arms. The arms have 3 different weapon variants, and so we're going to work on that. But before we do, we're going to need to build the Avatar model from this weird thing to a place where we can start attaching the arms. So I'll work on that and come back when I'm ready to talk about the arm magnets. Now that the head magnetization is complete, we have to figure out how to magnetize the weapons. And so we've got 3 options. So we've got the 3 weapons. We've got this axe. It looks pretty awesome. We have this spear, which looks phenomenal. And we have this sword, which is kind of traditionally what I think of as Wailing Doom. And as a matter of fact, they are all Wailing Doom. It doesn't matter which of these you put on your Avatar model, they're going to have the same stat lines. The only difference is going to be that you get to control what your avatar looks like, and in one game you can have the sword, another one you can have the spear. So, like the other magnetization step. This is completely unnecessary for the game. But if you want to play with your model as much as I do, it is completely necessary. So we have to take a look at how we're going to attach the weapon to the body of the avatar. And so there is this piece right here that goes on. It's like part chest, part shoulder. In fact, let me take the head off so that you have a better look. So this is relatively early on in the assembly process, and I was waiting to glue this down because I wanted to make sure I understood how everything was going to be put together. I wasn't sure if I was going to have to fill this in a little bit with epoxy putty. As it turns out, I don't, because this is the part, and it's attached sort of like that, and the weapon is attached right here. So the magnet doesn't have to go inside the chest cavity at all. It just has to be mounted onto this flat part or this other, or onto that part of the model. And if we look a bit more closely to get a better sense for how it's going to fit, it's going to fit kind of like that. So I think my best bet is going to be to magnetize that flat part. So it's going to be basically the vertical axis of this arm along with the vertical axis of the shoulder. And so a magnet here and a magnet there will make that join just fine. Unfortunately, that means we have relatively little real estate to play with. So we really only have space for one magnet, probably 3mm, maybe 4mm in diameter, probably 2mm in depth to be safe. I don't know that that's going to be enough of a hold to have a really good hold here. It might be okay for the sword and the axe. I'm not sure if it'll be okay with the lance. I'm afraid that this piece might be too heavy to stick on there. So my approach will be to drill into this piece, and I'm going to insert the biggest magnet I can possibly fit into that space. Same thing on this side, and we'll see if it's sufficient to hold these two together. Then cool. If it's not, then either we leave it loose or just give up on it and glue it together and just say, nah, it really can't be done. Not really. But we want to make sure. Let's try it out to see if we can get any success out of it. If we can, I'm going to be happy. All right, all the drilling has been done and the gluing as well. Here is that shoulder part that I was talking about with the magnet sunk inside it. And here is the sword. And it works. A sufficient hold. The axe, same way. And now for the real test, the lance. Yeah, it seems to have worked. I used magnets that were 3mm by 2mm. That was just the right fit, and it seems like it's the right strength. I won't know for sure until I assemble the rest of the model, so let's work on that and see how that works. Take a look at that bad boy. Looks gorgeous. And the heads come off. Wait, which side it was? Was it? There we go. The big old classical head. All right, so the hair is a little on the heavy side, so it's a little loose. But you know, we do what you can. And here, let me replace that with this head. And then this weapon can be swapped out, like so, and like so. So it's almost a complete success. Everything fits fairly well except for this huge avatar head. But there's one last thing that we have to magnetize, and it's kind of a bummer because it's less cosmetic than anything else. So you see this piece right here. On the forearm, the avatar has a bracer, which is this guy, which is fine, except that you only get the one bracer and you have 3 arms. So you can have one arm with a bracer, or you can have, to magnetize this guy. And as long as we're at it, let's just do the job right. It's not going to be that big a deal. We have a spot right on the arm. Each of these 3 arms has one, and we can insert a magnet in that slot, and it'll match the underside of this gauntlet. We'll just have to kind of sink a magnet right in there. It doesn't have to be particularly strong because this is not a heavy piece, but you do want a sturdy attachment because you don't want this flying off. You've already got enough magnetized pieces on this thing. So we'll insert the biggest magnet that we can in both spots. Let's give that a shot. A little bit of drilling and gluing later. We have the bracer right here, and it's got the magnet mounted in there. It was a little finicky, and I did end up drilling through the piece, so I'm less than happy with that, but it's not too bad. I could probably cover it up with some paint, maybe just a speck of the liquid green stuff. And here are the weapons. So here's the axe with the magnet on it, the spear with the magnet, and the sword with the magnet. So let's see if it works. Just like that. Just like that. And just like that. So now we have our big, badass Aeldar monster. He is complete. And if we want to switch his weapon, we can do that. Take the bracer off, slap it on there, and he is good to go. I am pretty stoked with the results of this magnetization project. It wasn't all that difficult. I did actually have to wait. I was out of these 3x2mm magnets, so I had to wait a little bit for them to come in, which inspired me to get better organized. So I now have all my magnets, different sizes, in these containers. It took a little while. I did all the labeling because I don't ever want to run out of just the right magnet size ever again. So this project helped me not just become better at magnetizing, but it also helped me become more organized. So I have a better inventory of what magnets I have on hand, and so now I will never run out of the things that I need to do awesome things like these. If you enjoyed this content, if you learned something about it, do me a favor. Would you hit the like, maybe the subscribe button? I'd appreciate it. And it'd make sure that content like this keeps coming out and entertaining you and educating you in the weeks, months, and hopefully years to come. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. Be nice to yourselves and each other. Peace.